You'd think after raising 2 kids of my own I'd have earned a break. But no, here I am 70 years old and still running around like some overworked nanny. My son Nate married Vivian Hartley Thompson 5 years ago, and ever since then I've been stuck playing mom to not just Alara and Finian but also to Vivi herself. Don't get me wrong, I love those grandbabies more than anything. It's their mother who drives me up the wall. Every morning I wake up at 6 sharp, brew coffee and start breakfast. By 8, Alara is dressed for kindergarten, and little Finian is happily munching on toast while babbling about dinosaurs. And where's Vivi? Still upstairs, buried under a mountain of blankets. If she hears us bustling below, she doesn't show it. Sometimes I wonder if she even knows what day it is. The house feels like it belongs to me now. Sure, Nate pays the mortgage, but this place runs on my schedule. Vivi floats through life like a ghost, barely present. At first, I thought she was adjusting to motherhood or maybe dealing with something personal. But years have passed and nothing has changed. She sleeps late, ignores chores and leaves everything, from parenting to grocery shopping, to me. Honestly, it's exhausting. It all came to a head one Saturday morning when Alara asked me why mommy never reads bedtime stories anymore. That question hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't know how to answer her without sounding bitter, so I just smiled and said, "Mommy's tired, sweetheart." But inside I was fuming. Later that afternoon I decided enough was enough. When Vivi finally emerged from her room around noon, hair messy, wearing pajamas, I handed her an alarm clock. "Here," I said firmly. "Maybe this will help you remember there's a world outside your bedroom." She blinked at me, confused. Then her face hardened. "Are you seriously trying to tell me how to live my life?" she snapped. Her voice echoed through the kitchen, startling poor Finian, who dropped his sippy cup. "I'm not the one forcing myself into other people's business." We stared each other down, neither willing to back down. For a moment I considered apologizing, but pride kept my lips sealed. Instead I turned away and muttered, "Suit yourself." As I cleaned up Finian's spilled juice, I wondered how things had gotten so bad between us. Nate came home from his latest business trip 2 days later, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing under his roof. He walked in carrying his suitcase, kissed Vivi hello and ruffled the kids' hair before flopping onto the couch. "How's everyone doing?" he asked cheerfully. Vivi shot me a glare before plastered on a fake smile. "Oh, we're fine," she said sweetly. Too sweetly. "Right, Ellie?" I bit my tongue and nodded. There was no point dragging him into our drama right away. Let him enjoy dinner first. But later that night, as we were clearing dishes, Vivi broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed feeling overwhelmed and inadequate. Nate hugged her tightly, whispering reassurances. Meanwhile, I stood awkwardly by the sink, torn between sympathy and frustration. Part of me wanted to comfort her too. Another part couldn't forget the countless mornings I'd spent picking up her slack. Eventually, Nate looked at me, his brow furrowed. "Mom, can we talk about this tomorrow? Maybe find a way to fix things." I sighed. "Sure, Nate. We'll talk." But deep down I doubted talking would solve anything. The next day I tried a different approach. Determined to teach Vivi responsibility, I enlisted Alara and Finian to help around the house. "Let's make this fun," I announced brightly, handing them small tasks. Alara loved watering the plants and Finian giggled as he carried socks to the laundry basket. At first, Vivi watched from the sidelines, arms crossed. "They're too young for chores," she protested. "They should be playing." "They are playing," I countered. "And learning independence. You'd be surprised how capable they are." To my surprise, Vivi joined in. Not because she wanted to, but because the kids begged her to. Seeing her laugh alongside them warmed my heart, until she accused me afterward of undermining her authority. "You're turning them against me," she shouted. "That's not true," I replied, though guilt gnawed at me. Was I really making things worse? One rainy afternoon, while Vivi was out grocery shopping, a rare occurrence, I decided to tackle the attic. It had become a dumping ground for forgotten boxes and dusty photo albums, and I figured it was time to clear some space. As I sifted through old trunks, I stumbled upon a bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon. They were written by my late husband, Nate's father, during our early years of marriage. I smiled as I read his words, how he admired my strength, my ability to juggle work and family, how he called me the backbone of this house. But then something caught my eye. A line where he joked about how I'd probably end up raising grandchildren someday because I couldn't resist being needed. At first it made me chuckle, but as I thought about it, sadness crept in. Was that what I was doing now? Had I stepped into this role not because it was necessary, but because I didn't know how to step back? As I sat there lost in memories, Vivi returned home unexpectedly. She must have seen the letters in my hands because she froze at the doorway. "What are you doing?" she asked sharply, her tone laced with suspicion. "Just cleaning," I replied, tucking the letters away quickly. But Vivi wasn't satisfied. She marched over, grabbed one of the letters and skimmed it. Her face paled, then flushed red. "So that's what you think of me," she said bitterly. "You see me as weak. Someone who can't handle her own life." "No, Vivi, that's not." But she cut me off. "Don't bother, Ellie. I already know what you're thinking. You'll never respect me, will you?" And with that she stormed out, leaving me sitting amidst the clutter, feeling like the worst kind of hypocrite. After the attic incident, things between Vivi and me reached a new low. She barely spoke to me unless absolutely necessary, and when she did, her words were clipped and cold. Even Nate noticed the tension during one of his brief visits. "Mom, what happened?" he asked me privately after dinner. "Vivi seems distant." "I don't know," I lied. Well, half-lied. I knew exactly what had caused the rift, but I couldn't bring myself to admit my part in it. Instead I deflected. "She's been acting strange lately. Maybe she's stressed or something." Nate frowned. "You two need to figure this out. It's affecting everyone, even the kids." He was right, of course. Elara had started asking why Mommy and Grandma didn't talk anymore, and Finian seemed confused whenever Vivi snapped at him for no reason. Still, I couldn't shake the image of Vivi reading those letters, her eyes filled with hurt and anger. Did she really believe I saw her as incapable? Or was she projecting her own insecurities onto me? That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized I'd been so focused on fixing Vivi that I hadn't stopped to consider why she acted the way she did. Maybe there was more to her story than laziness or apathy. Maybe I owed her the benefit of the doubt. A few weeks later, I noticed something unusual. Vivi began waking up earlier. Not by much. At first it was just enough to share breakfast with the kids before they left for school. But it was progress, and I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Then one evening, as I tucked Elara into bed, she whispered, "Grandma, Mommy helped me with my homework today." My heart skipped a beat. "Really? That's wonderful, sweetheart." The next morning I found Vivi sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, scrolling through her phone. For once she didn't look annoyed to see me. In fact, she greeted me with a hesitant smile. "Good morning, Ellie," she said softly. "Morning," I replied, equally cautious. "How are you feeling?" She hesitated, then sighed. "Better, I think. I've been seeing someone, a therapist. She's helping me understand, well, everything." I blinked, surprised. Therapy? Why hadn't she mentioned this before? Then again, given our rocky relationship, I shouldn't have expected her to confide in me. "That's great, Vivi," I said sincerely. "I'm glad you're taking care of yourself." Her smile widened slightly. "Thanks. It's not easy, but I'm trying." For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of optimism. Maybe we weren't beyond repair after all. When spring arrived, I decided to organize a community garden project to beautify our neighborhood. It was something I'd wanted to do for years, and I hoped it would bring people together, including Vivi and me. To my surprise, Vivi agreed to help. "It might be nice to get out of the house," she admitted shyly. On the day of the event, neighbors gathered in our backyard, planting flowers and shrubs under the warm April sun. Vivi surprised everyone, including herself, with her artistic flair. She arranged colorful blooms into intricate patterns, earning compliments from passers-by. "You've got a real talent for this," Mrs. Peterson, our neighbor, told her approvingly. Vivi blushed. "Thank you. I used to love art in college, but life got in the way." As I watched her laugh and chat with others, I realized how much I'd underestimated her. Beneath her quiet exterior lay a creative, capable woman who simply needed encouragement, and maybe a little faith, to shine. That evening, as we cleaned up, I approached her cautiously. "You did amazing today, Vivi. Thank you for helping." She looked at me startled. "You're welcome," she murmured. Then, almost reluctantly, she added, "And thank you for letting me be part of it." It wasn't an apology, nor was it forgiveness. But it was a start. Just when I thought things were improving, another argument erupted, one that felt like it might undo all the fragile progress we'd made. It happened during dinner one evening. Vivi had cooked spaghetti, which was a rare occurrence, and though it wasn't perfect, the sauce was a bit too salty. I wanted to encourage her efforts. "That was delicious, Vivi," I said with a tight smile, even as my taste buds protested. "Thank you for cooking." She gave me a wary glance, clearly unsure if I was being sincere. Before she could respond, Alara piped up. "Mommy, why don't you cook more often? Grandma always does it better." The room went silent. Vivi's face turned crimson, and I saw the hurt flash in her eyes before she masked it with anger. "Well, maybe if your grandmother didn't insist on doing everything, I'd have the chance," she snapped, slamming her fork onto the table. "Vivi, calm down," Nate started, but she cut him off. "No, Nate. You're never here to see how she criticizes everything I do. She acts like I'm some incompetent child who can't take care of my own family." I felt my own temper flare. "And maybe if you stepped up once in a while, I wouldn't feel the need to criticize." The kids stared at us wide-eyed and scared. Nate looked torn between comforting his wife and defending me. Finally, he stood up and ushered the children out of the room. When they were gone, Vivi turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "You'll never see me as anything but a failure, will you?" Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Failure? Was that really how she saw herself? And worse, was that how I'd made her feel? That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room, staring into the fireplace. The embers glowed faintly, casting flickering shadows across the walls. My mind replayed the fight over and over again, each memory stabbing at my conscience. Had I been too hard on Vivi? Maybe. But wasn't I just trying to help? Didn't she realize that every meal I cooked, every load of laundry I folded, every bedtime story I read, it was all because I loved her kids? Because I wanted them to have stability and structure? But then I thought about what she'd said, "You'll never see me as anything but a failure." Was that true? Had I spent so much time criticizing her that I'd blinded myself to her potential? To her pain? I remembered something my therapist used to say back when I struggled with grief after losing Nate's father. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't forgiving others, it's forgiving yourself. Maybe it was time I stopped seeing Vivi as someone who needed fixing and started seeing her as someone who needed support. Someone who, like me, was just trying her best. A week later, disaster struck. We were at the park. A rare outing where Vivi actually joined us instead of staying home. Finian was climbing on the jungle gym while Alara played hopscotch nearby. Everything seemed fine until Finian let out a blood-curdling scream. I rushed over to find him clutching his throat, coughing violently. Panic surged through me as I realized he must have swallowed something. Without thinking, I scooped him up and shouted for Vivi. "Call 911. She froze, her phone halfway to her ear. For a split second I thought she'd crumble under the pressure. But then she sprang into action, dialing emergency services while keeping pace beside me as we ran to the car. At the hospital, doctors confirmed that Finian had swallowed a small button battery from his toy. Thankfully, they removed it quickly and he was going to be okay. Still, the hours we spent waiting in the ER felt like an eternity. As we sat together in the sterile waiting room, neither of us spoke. The tension between us was palpable, but there was also something else. A shared fear that transcended our differences. When Finian finally emerged from treatment, safe and sound, Vivi broke down in tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered hoarsely. "This is all my fault. I should have kept a closer eye on him." "It's not your fault," I said gently, surprising even myself. "Accidents happen. What matters is that he's okay now." For the first time in months, I reached out and hugged her. She stiffened at first, then relaxed, sobbing quietly into my shoulder. In that moment, I realized we weren't enemies. We were two women who loved those children more than anything. After the hospital ordeal, Vivi and I found ourselves sitting side by side on her bedroom floor late that night. The kids were asleep, and Nate had called to check in but decided to stay at work since everything was under control. "I didn't mean to snap at you earlier," Vivi said softly, twisting a strand of hair around her finger. "About everything." "I know," I replied. "And I'm sorry too, for pushing you so hard. I guess I thought I was helping, but maybe I was just making things worse." She nodded, avoiding my gaze. "It's not just you, Ellie. I've always felt like I'm failing, as a mom, as a wife, as a person. When Nate brought me into this family, I thought I'd finally found somewhere I belonged. But instead, I feel like I'm constantly disappointing everyone." Her words broke my heart. "Oh, Vivi," I murmured. You're not disappointing anyone. You're human. We all make mistakes. And honestly, I haven't exactly been easy to live with either. She laughed weakly. True. This'll. I want to do better. For the kids. For Nate. For me. I smiled, feeling a lump rise in my throat. Then let's figure it out together. One step at a time. A few days after the hospital incident, Vivi invited me to join her for a therapy session. At first, I hesitated. Therapy wasn't something I was familiar with, and the idea of sitting in a room while someone analyzed our family dynamics felt uncomfortable. But when she explained that her therapist, Dr. Clara Bennett, thought it might help us communicate better, I agreed. The office was warm and inviting, filled with soft lighting and the scent of lavender. Dr. Bennett greeted us with a calm smile and encouraged both of us to share openly. Vivi went first, explaining how she'd struggled with postpartum depression after Alara's birth but never sought treatment because she didn't want to burden anyone. I grew up bouncing between foster homes, she admitted, her voice trembling. I never had parents who taught me how to be a parent. I didn't know what normal looked like. So when things got hard, I just shut down. Her confession hit me like a tidal wave. All this time I'd assumed Vivi's behavior stemmed from laziness or selfishness. I hadn't considered that she might be carrying wounds far deeper than I could imagine. When it was my turn to speak, I found myself choking up. I've been so focused on helping, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. But I never stopped to ask if you wanted help, or if you even needed it. I thought I was being supportive, but maybe I was just taking over. Dr. Bennett nodded thoughtfully. It sounds like both of you have been operating from places of love, but also fear. Ellie, your fear of not doing enough. Vivi, your fear of not being enough. Those fears can drive a wedge between people, even when they care deeply about each other. As we left the session, I reached out and squeezed Vivi's hand. Thank you for sharing that with me, I said quietly. I promise I'll try harder to understand where you're coming from. She gave me a small, grateful smile. For the first time in years, I felt like we were truly on the same side. Over the next several weeks, Vivi and I worked to rebuild our relationship, one awkward conversation at a time. We started small, dividing household responsibilities more evenly. She took charge of breakfasts and lunches while I handled dinners and bedtime routines. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of frustration and miscommunication. But slowly we began to find a rhythm. One morning, as I sipped coffee at the kitchen table, I watched Vivi help Finian tie his shoes. He giggled as she made exaggerated faces, pretending to wrestle with the laces. Seeing her laugh and engage with him warmed my heart in a way I hadn't expected. You're really good with them, I said impulsively. She looked up, surprised. Thanks. That means a lot coming from you. We shared a brief smile before returning to our tasks. These tiny moments of connection became more frequent, building bridges where there had once been walls. Even Nate noticed the change during one of his visits. What's going on here? He joked one evening. Did aliens abduct my mom and wife and replace them with nicer versions? Vivi laughed, a genuine full-bodied laugh, and threw a dish towel at him. Don't push your luck, mister. For the first time in ages, our home felt lighter. The air wasn't thick with tension anymore. Instead, it buzzed with hope. One Saturday afternoon, Vivi sat me down in the living room with an expression so serious I braced myself for bad news. Instead, she handed me a brochure for a local community college. I'm thinking about enrolling in art classes, she said nervously. It's something I've always wanted to do, but I never thought I could. Now, well, I think it's time I tried. I stared at the brochure, stunned. Art? I knew she'd mentioned loving art in college, but hearing her talk about pursuing it now felt monumental. That's incredible, Vivi, I said, my voice cracking slightly. I think it's a wonderful idea. Really? Her eyes widened with surprise. You're not mad? Or worried I'll drop everything and leave you to pick up the slack again? No, I replied firmly. You deserve this. And besides, I trust you to figure out how to balance it all. If you need help, we'll work it out together. Tears welled up in her eyes and she hugged me tightly. Thank you, Ellie. This means so much to me. That night, as I tucked Alara into bed, she asked, Grandma, why is Mommy so happy today? I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Because she's following her dreams, sweetheart. Just like you will someday. 2 years later, I stood proudly in the audience as Vivi walked across the stage to receive her diploma in graphic design. She looked radiant in her cap and gown, beaming with pride as she waved to Alara, Finian, and Nate, who cheered loudly from their seats. When it came time for speeches, Vivi stepped up to the microphone, gripping the sides tightly. "I want to dedicate this achievement to my children," she began, her voice wavering with emotion. "To Alara and Finian, who inspire me every day to be brave and kind. To my husband, Nate, for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. And to my mother-in-law, Eleanor." He paused, meeting my gaze. "Who taught me that love isn't about control, it's about support. Thank you for showing me the way even when I fought against it." The crowd erupted into applause, but all I could focus on was the warmth spreading through my chest. I had spent years trying to mold Vivi into someone I thought she should be. In the end, she had become someone far greater, not because of me but despite me. As she descended the stage, diploma in hand, I pulled her into a tight embrace. "I'm so proud of you," I whispered. "And I'm proud of us," she replied softly. In that moment, I realized something profound. Families aren't built on perfection. They're built on forgiveness, growth, and the willingness to let go, even when it's the hardest thing you've ever done. After graduation, Vivi landed an internship at a local design studio. It wasn't glamorous work. Most days involved updating client presentations or tweaking color palettes, but she thrived on it. Every evening, she'd come home buzzing with excitement, sharing stories about her projects and the people she worked with. At first, I worried that her new responsibilities would strain our already delicate balance. But to my surprise, Vivi managed beautifully. She set up a schedule where she handled mornings and early afternoons, leaving me to cover evenings. On weekends, we split chores evenly, often turning them into mini bonding sessions. One Saturday, as we folded laundry together, Vivi turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Ellie, I've been thinking, maybe I should write about all of this." "Write about what?" I asked, intrigued. "Our journey, the fights, the misunderstandings, the healing. Maybe someone else out there could benefit from hearing our story." I raised an eyebrow. "A memoir? About us?" She nodded, grinning sheepishly. "Yeah. I mean, not just us, you, me, the kids, Nate. All of it. What do you think?" To be honest, the idea made me nervous. Sharing our private struggles with the world felt like opening Pandora's box. But when I saw the determination in Vivi's eyes, I realized how much courage it took for her to even suggest it. "If it's important to you," I said finally, "then go for it. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "That you won't sugarcoat anything. If you're going to tell our story, tell it honestly, even the ugly parts." Her smile widened. "Deal." As Vivi poured herself into her career and writing, Alara and Finian continued to blossom under her renewed attention. Gone were the days when they barely noticed their mother. Now they clung to her like barnacles, eager to share every little detail of their lives. Alara, now 7, had developed a passion for drawing and often joined Vivi at the kitchen table, sketching alongside her. One afternoon, I overheard them giggling as Vivi taught her how to blend colors using watercolors. No, sweetheart," Vivi said, guiding Alara's hand. "You want to use light strokes here. Like this." Alara squealed with delight. "Mommy, look. It looks like a sunset." Finian, now 5, adored helping Vivi organize her art supplies. He took his role as studio assistant very seriously, proudly announcing each time he restocked pencils or arranged brushes. "They adore you," I told Vivi one evening as we watched the kids play in the backyard. She smiled wistfully. "It feels good to finally be present for them. For so long I thought I'd missed my chance to connect with them. But no. I feel like we're building something real." Her words reminded me of how far she'd come, and how much she'd grown. It wasn't just her confidence that had changed, it was her entire outlook on life. Watching her thrive filled me with pride, and a touch of bittersweet nostalgia. That summer, Nate surprised Vivi with a weekend getaway to Cape Cod. "You've earned it," he told her as they packed their bags. "Both of you have worked so hard lately. Take some time to relax." Vivi hesitated, glancing at me. "Are you sure you don't mind staying with the kids?" "Of course not," I replied, waving off her concern. "Go. Have fun. You deserve it." The truth was, I enjoyed having the house to myself for a change. Without the usual hustle and bustle, I found time to reflect on everything that had happened over the past few years. On Saturday morning, I woke up early and made pancakes for the kids. As we ate breakfast together, Alara asked, "Grandma, do you think Mommy and Daddy are having adventures without us?" I chuckled. Probably. But don't worry, they'll be back soon enough. Later that day, I took them to the park where we flew kites and chased butterflies. By the time Nate and Vivi returned Sunday evening, the kids were exhausted but happy. "How was your trip?" I asked as they unpacked. Vivi grinned mischievously. "Let's just say it was exactly what we needed." Nate laughed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "And then some." Seeing them so relaxed and content warmed my heart. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew they'd face them together, as a team. Over the next several months, Vivi threw herself into writing her memoir. She spent countless hours typing away on her laptop, pausing only to jot down notes or sketch illustrations in the margins. Occasionally, she'd ask me questions about specific events, seeking clarification or confirmation. "You remember that fight in the kitchen?" she asked one evening, referring to the spat over spaghetti. Was I really that harsh? I winced, recalling the sting of her words. Well, yes. But I wasn't exactly kind either. We both said things we regretted. She nodded, scribbling furiously in her notebook. Good. I want to make sure I capture everything accurately, not just my perspective but yours too. Her dedication impressed me. Writing a memoir wasn't easy, especially one that delved into such raw emotions. Yet Vivi approached it with grace and honesty, unafraid to confront the uglier aspects of our relationship. When she finished the first draft, she handed it to me with trembling hands. "Will you read it? And tell me if it's okay?" I promised I would, and as I flipped through the pages, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd come. What started as a fractured family dynamic had transformed into a testament to love, resilience, and growth. Months later, Vivi's memoir, What an Alarm Clock Couldn't Teach Me, hit bookstore shelves. To everyone's astonishment, including her own, it quickly climbed the bestseller lists. Critics praised its raw honesty and relatable themes, while readers flooded social media with messages of gratitude. "I never knew anyone else felt this way," one reviewer wrote. "Thank you for putting our struggles into words." Another commented, "This book gave me hope that healing is possible, even in the messiest situations." Watching Vivi navigate fame was surreal. She appeared on talk shows, gave interviews, and attended book signings, all while juggling her job and family responsibilities. Through it all, she remained grounded, crediting her success to the lessons she'd learned along the way. "This isn't just my story," she told a reporter during one interview. "It's ours. Mine, my husband's, my kids, and yes, even my mother-in-law's. Without her, I wouldn't be where I am today." Hearing those words brought tears to my eyes. I had spent years trying to guide Vivi, only to discover that she had guided me right back. The success of Vivi's memoir created ripples far beyond anything we could have anticipated. Readers from all over the world reached out, sharing their own stories of family struggles, mental health battles, and redemption. Some sent heartfelt letters. Others posted videos online expressing how her words had inspired them to seek help or mend broken relationships. One day, as I sat in the living room flipping through a magazine, I stumbled upon an article featuring Vivi. The headline read, "From foster care to best-selling author, How One Woman Turned Pain into Purpose." Beneath it was a photo of her smiling warmly, surrounded by Alara, Finian, Nate, and, surprisingly, me. I called her into the room holding up the magazine. "Did you know about this?" She glanced at the page and laughed. "Oh, that? Yeah, they asked permission to use the photo. I figured it was fine since you're basically the co-star of my story." "Co-star?" I echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Well, sure," she said matter-of-factly. "Without you, there wouldn't be a story to tell. You were the catalyst for everything, the tough love, the wake-up call, the support when I needed it most." Her words caught me off guard. For years, I'd seen myself as the antagonist in her life, a meddling mother-in-law who couldn't let go. But now, hearing her describe me as someone who played a vital role in her journey made me see our relationship in a new light. Later that week, Vivi received an email from a woman named Sarah, who wrote about leaving an abusive marriage after reading What an Alarm Clock Couldn't Teach Me. "Your book gave me the courage to start over," Sarah explained. "Now I'm pursuing my dream of opening a bakery. Thank you for reminding me that second chances are possible." Vivi printed out the message and pinned it to the fridge. This is why I wrote it, she told me quietly. Not for fame or money, but to remind people that no matter how broken things seem, there's always hope. As the years passed, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Ilara entered middle school, blossoming into a confident young artist, while Finian discovered a love for soccer, spending hours practicing kicks in the backyard. Watching them grow reminded me of how fleeting childhood truly is, and how grateful I was to have been part of their journey. Still, change wasn't without its challenges. When Vivi accepted a promotion that required longer hours, tensions flared briefly between her and Nate. "It feels like we're back to square one," he confided in me one evening. "I thought we'd moved past this." But instead of retreating into old patterns, VVI initiated another round of therapy, this time focused on communication within their marriage. Seeing her take proactive steps to address issues before they spiraled out of control filled me with pride. One autumn afternoon, as I helped Vivi pack boxes for her new office, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't worked things out?" "All the time," I admitted. "There were moments when I thought we'd never find common ground. But here we are, stronger than ever." She smiled, her eyes misty. "I owe so much of that strength to you, Ellie. Not just because you pushed me, but because you stayed. Even when I pushed back, you never gave up on me." For once, I didn't deflect the compliment. Instead, I pulled her into a tight hug. "And I never will," I whispered. Years later, long after the kids had grown and flown the nest, Vivi and I found ourselves sitting side by side on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The air was crisp with the scent of fall leaves, and the only sounds were the rustling trees and distant chirps of crickets. "I can't believe how fast time flies," Vivi mused, sipping her tea. "Feels like just yesterday we were fighting over breakfast." I chuckled. "And now look at us, two old ladies reminiscing about the good old days." She nudged me playfully. "Speak for yourself." "I'm not that old." We laughed, the sound echoing softly in the twilight. For a moment, neither of us spoke, content to simply sit together in companionable silence. Finally, Vivi broke the quiet. "Do you remember what you said to me during therapy? About letting go?" "Of course," I replied. "It was one of the hardest lessons I've ever had to learn." She nodded thoughtfully. "Well, I think you did more than let go, Ellie. You taught me how to hold on, to myself, to my dreams, to my family. And honestly, I don't know if I'd be here today without you." Her words brought tears to my eyes. "Stop making me cry, Vivi. You know I hate that." She grinned, wiping away her own tears. "Too bad. You deserve it." As the last rays of sunlight faded, I leaned back in my chair, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Life hadn't turned out the way I'd expected. It had been messier, harder, and infinitely more rewarding. Through every challenge, every argument, every moment of doubt, we had somehow managed to build something beautiful. And as I looked at Vivi, now a confident, accomplished woman with silver streaks threading through her hair, I realized something profound. Love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when you're not sure you'll make it through. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't fixing their problems. It's giving them the space to fix themselves.